Friends, welcome to another edition of our podcast. And today my guest is the Reverend Mike Thomason, who is the newly appointed moderator of the Northwestern Synod. Mike, great to have you. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be here, Lawrence, and wonderful to chat to you.
Yeah, good. I hope you still feel that way by the end of it.
We'll see how we go.
We will. How about introducing yourself, Mike, where you've come from and how you got to where you are?
Absolutely. So it's a long story, so I hope you're buckled in. I'm originally from the Northwest, so grew up in Swinton in Salford as a member of Worsley Road United Reformed Church, which is still going strong. But then from there, trained for ministry at Northern College, so didn't go very far, with placements across Greater Manchester in a variety of different churches. From there was then called to Bolton West Pastorate in the Northwest Manchester district, as it was, and served at New Chapel, Lee Lane, Adlington and Somerset Road churches.
What years are we talking about?
So that was 2002 to 2006.
Right.
And you'll probably notice from those list of churches, apart from New Chapel, the rest have closed or in the process of closing, which had nothing to do with me.
Of course
I would say. And then from there was called to Army chaplaincy and served as an Army chaplain for 13 years.
Right.
So upon the completion of training, we were posted out to Germany to work with the engineers and REME, and during that time was sent to Iraq in 2006, which was a unique time. And then after there, we were posted to Abingdon in Oxfordshire, then down to Pirbright in Surrey, very different postings, and then back to Germany for a couple of years. And they said a couple of years, but we ended up there 6 on that time. Also with a little sojourn to Afghanistan. And the worst part of one of the postings was I had to go to New Zealand for 3 months.
Oh, that must have been hell.
It was horrific. Paid for by the services. But yeah, spent the last 6 years of my ministry in the Army were in Germany working with the Rifles, then as garrison chaplain, then as senior chaplain 20 Armoured Brigade, which covered chaplaincy across Germany as well as operational deployments in various places where we were and we weren't, obviously, but also working as senior chaplain NATO for the very high readiness joint task force, which was quite a special time. Then felt a real call to come out of that. So I was asked to go into a desk job, or was told to be going into a desk job, but felt that I'm a pastorate minister. I can push papers around, I can do that, but my heart is people. And I wanted to be involved with people. So was then called back to a church, a local church in Surrey, in the south of England.
Right.
But that wasn't a straight path, because I went for an interview at a church, and I'm not saying where because it wouldn't be fair, but I thought it ticked all the boxes I wanted, which was very rural, nowhere near the military, and just a URC, not an LEP of any sort.
Okay.
So, and as soon as I walked into the town, I knew it was wrong.
Really?
So you know where God's at. But the church I ended up with was suburbia, commuting for London, next to the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, and a URC Methodist LEP of many years. But a thriving church that had activities happening all day, every day, about 1,500 people through the building each week, a thriving congregation, but just needed some cajoling and some guidance and some love to get it back on track. So in the 8 years there, we saw some phenomenal initiatives. We saw growth, and I'm delighted to say, that's going on still today. And the final thing we did when I was there, which wasn't planned when I went, we had some roof issues. Churches always seem to have roof issues. It's never the doors and it's never the car park. It's always the roof.
Yeah.
And with a roof, you kind of start adding zeros to the project. And the initial quote for the whole project was about $500,000. When we got to the stage where we then had a proper quote, it came in at $2 million.
Goodness.
Because the scaffold itself was $500,000 due to the size of the building. But through active fundraising as a congregation and applying for grants, we raised the $2 million.
Wow.
And that's happening now. I was delighted to leave as the scaffolding went up. So the
good timing.
It was perfect timing. Yeah. So,
Mike, I want to ask you, as you reflect back on your time in the Army, I mean, the places you've been, some of them sounded quite dodgy, and I wondered. That was just Germany.
Yeah.
And I wondered to what extent those experiences in those places have formed and shaped your ministry now?
I think the answer, they were fundamental to forming who I am now. On my first tour, I went to Iraq, and it was an interesting tour. I was injured, so if you see me rubbing my shoulder, it is a war wound, and it's a genuine war wound. But those experiences shape you. And one of the things I questioned time and again in my first post in the army was, what am I here for? What is the point of a chaplain? What is the point of just being? And I didn't quite get it. I really didn't get it. I'd learned in that first post how to justify why I was a United Reformed Church minister and not an Anglican or a Methodist, but I couldn't quite work out what a chaplain meant until the day I was leaving the unit. And I went round and I was talking to one of the corporals, and I said to him, I'm not sure what I've achieved in the last 2 years of being here. I'm a bit uncertain. And he sat me down and he said, Padre, get a grip, which is a wonderful army phrase.
Yeah,
he said, and pin your ears back because I'm going to tell you. And he said, what you did is you were there. He said, when we were in Iraq, every single day, you came to the QM's tent, the quartermaster's tent, and you said hello to us, you said good morning, you offered to make us a drink, and sometimes we said yes, and sometimes we chatted to you. Other times we said no, and you sat and read the paper. But you were there, and you walked alongside us, and you did it because God had called you to do it, and for no other reason. And that realization that the relationships were so strong that actually just being there, being present within that community made a difference. And when you think of our churches, actually, the disappointment when a church closes isn't just from within the church, it's from within the outside the whole community, because there's something about presence and being. And certainly in my last pastorate, not only was I responsible for High Cross Church, but actually I ensured we had a presence and were known in the town, so that when somebody walked through the town with a polo shirt with a church logo on, they knew what it meant. It meant safety, it meant community, it meant care, so that people would come and talk and know that they could get help. That being is so important.
It is, and I think we forget it so easily as churches. After all, Jesus, simply by being wherever he pitched up, was good news.
Absolutely.
Things started happening just because he was there.
It's that curb appeal, isn't it? When you walk up to the church building, what does it say? What's on the notice boards? And we need to look at things with new eyes. And it's almost dressing the set to allow the conversations of faith to take place. I have many bugbears, but one of the things I love is pulpit bingo. I don't know if you've ever played this. When you're a preacher, you get behind the pulpit and it's what's in the pulpit. Because at your own churches, go and have a look at your church, what's stored in the pulpit. I went to one church and they were clearly pyromaniacs because there was about 6 boxes of matches. But the same church, I went another day and I got the jackpot because there was a box of celebrations there, uneaten. And it was brilliant. But it was just this thing of thinking about what we present. What do we say to the person coming to lead worship by what's there? And that then rolls on into what we say to the community. We expect people to come to us, the community to come to us. We're getting it wrong. We need, as a church, to be going out to them. And the classic example for that is, I've been involved with the Air Cadets for many years, and as I move here to be moderator, I'm going to be the chaplain to Horwich Air Cadets. But there's an opportunity there. Our churches don't have young people. So actually, rather than bemoan the fact we don't have young people, how do we connect with young people? Well, actually, we go out of our churches and go where they are. And that might be assisting in uniformed organisations, youth groups, various different things. So when I was in Camberley, I said, yes, we didn't have a youth group, but twice a week I met with 80 young people and had conversations that mattered.
Yeah.
And that's taking the church there and being present in the community.
Yeah. Let's talk about your journey to becoming the moderator here. Now, I know that you've shared that, and it was a process that in some sense the whole synod has shared in because of the discernment process. So what I'm interested in, though, is what were you being told during this process about why we as a synod were convinced that you were the right person for this post? What was being fed back to you? Mike, we see this in you or that in you.
And it's an interesting question because just over 12 months ago, when it was muted, that I should consider applying, being nominated for the moderator of Northwestern Synod, I laughed, and I laughed for about 2 days, because I said, no way. Because certainly 2 or 3 years ago, I said to a moderator at the time, I have no intention of being a moderator, and I mean it.
Yeah.
Says he sat here as a moderator.
Yeah, I believe you.
And it was at spring school in Wessex Synod last year that somebody, and the person who I think it was doesn't think it was them, so it says how insignificant the conversation was to them, said to me, Northwestern is becoming vacant. You should really consider it. It'd be fabulous because of having grown up there, all the skills you've got, what you've done, and you're able to see things in a critical way, but also a way that will pastorally grow.
Right.
And I said, no, it's not happening. And I went home and said to my wife what had been said, and she had that Vicar of Dibley moment. No. and again, Sue, a couple of days later, came back and went, well, actually, I could see why that would work. But you also have trusted friends, don't you, that you say. And I rang up a colleague who used to be a minister in the Northwest. I'm not telling you who it is, because I don't want you to go and hunt him down at some point. And he said to me, in the most wonderful way, he said, well, it's not the daftest thing I've heard. And it was one of those, and I reflected on it, and I said, well, if I'm nominated, I'll consider it. And I was nominated. And so considered a meeting with a vacancy committee and just being able to share with the panel my views and discern together what was right was really important.
Yeah.
And it was, and I confess, and I think it's the best thing to confess, is to say, I wasn't convinced. I thought, actually, I came away thinking, I really hope that this is where God's calling me, but we'll wait to see. And when I had the phone call from the General Secretary, from John Bradbury, there was a moment of stunned silence of, are you sure? And I said to my wife quite openly, until I get called to that role, I don't know whether I'll take it. But when he said, yes, the panel would like to nominate you as the next moderator, I knew at that moment it was the right thing. I was talking with a friend who was there when he laid on hands when I was ordained in 2002. And I said to him, the moment I knew that God was calling to me to ministry was that moment of the ordination prayer and the laying on of hands. Not when I was discerning it through assessment conference, not at college, not through the process of going to a church. It was that moment that I was 100% convinced. And it's by God's grace that I do this work.
It's great to hear that story, Mike. It's important and encouraging. But I do notice that you've carefully avoided asking my question, which was, what was being fed back to you to say, we see this or that or the other in you?
It's an interesting one. And I think there's not a huge amount that's been fed back, actually, which is interesting. But the General Secretary did say, he said, what is good is your breadth of experience, the breadth of doing different things, your people management skills, having run teams of clergy, which were interesting in the military from all different levels, having dealt with a variety of situations, but actually that pastoral care and support that comes across. I believe that working together starts, if there's a problem, have a cup of tea and talk about it. Back to basics. Playing yo-yo with emails is what we do. It doesn't help. Actually pick up the phone, go and have a cup of tea with somebody, and that helps. And the panel got that. That actually I'm somebody that wants to be with the churches, not to rule over them. And the role of moderator is really simple. It's about being a minister to the ministers and a friend of the churches. And you can only achieve that by walking alongside and journeying with. And that's really important. So at the moment, in the first couple of months, I'm going to visit every single minister in the synod that's in pastoral charge to make sure I understand them and get them and understand the issues that they feel and face, but also getting around to worship with a variety of churches, because actually it's that pastoral heart, and that is at the centre of my ministry.
I wasn't involved in your appointment at all. I would have been an active enthusiast, because you and I have known each other, I think...
when I was training at Northern.
Had I been asked, and I wasn't, and I'm not offended, I hasten to add, I would have said that one of your gifts that I think is really important in the United Reformed Church and is disappointingly rare is that you're not afraid of difficult situations.
No.
Your response to a difficult situation, you walk towards them.
Yeah.
And fearlessly. I would have used that word, fearlessly. Do you think that's a fair?
I think it's fair, and I think it would also be fair to say, if we brush things under the carpet, things only get worse.
Yeah.
So actually walking into a difficult situation and talking about it over that cup of tea helps bring it out in the open and means that we can work our way forward. But the most important thing in anything like that is respecting each other's view.
Yes.
And somebody, unfortunately, in the end has to make the final decision. And I'm discovering a lot of times that's generally me that's got to make a final decision. But it is about ensuring we make a decision that's right and that everyone has agreed to and then sticking to it. And it works well. And certainly in local church ministry, when you have a big church and everyone's got their own agendas, trying to bring that together is interesting. When we enter those difficult conversations, we do them with the love and grace of God to ensure we get the right outcome.
Yes, that's
the important thing. And the other important thing is I'm not always right. So what I think might be the way through it might not be the actual way through it. Yeah. And together we discern that and work it out.
That's the other part of what I would have wanted to say is you walk towards a situation, but you walk towards it in order to be pastoral.
Yeah.
It's not a power move.
Oh gosh, never.
And I think, that combination of a fearlessness with a pastoral heart is what I personally am delighted that you bring to the role.
Thank you. That's very gracious.
When you look at the synod, from the very beginning of your ministry as our moderator, what's the landscape like?
I think it's a bit like the physical landscape of the Northwest, a little bumpy in places. And that's I have to confess, that is one of the absolute joys of coming back to the Northwest is the physical landscape stunning. But I think over the last few years, the synod has been through some tricky times, some difficult times. I remember the synod years back under Keith Forecast, which many will remember. And it was through Keith that I was accepted for training and came into training for ministry. The synod was a very different place. We had significantly more churches, we had significantly more members, and we had significantly more ministers.
Yeah.
So when I was first ordained in Bolton, there was 5 of us just in Bolton.
Gosh.
Which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the number of ministers we have covering churches are still looking after the same number of members as we were back then. It's just that the members have spread out, the churches have spread out, and we're trying to juggle it all. The landscape's tricky as well because there is a real sense I've picked up within the synod of from the churches of the synod doing to the churches rather than guiding the churches.
Yeah.
And that in itself being an at-heart congregationalist and therefore comes with an inbuilt stubbornness, which is wonderful, is the sense that there is the us and them. And as I made it really clear at the synod meeting a couple of weeks ago, the synod is you. The synod is every single member of the United Reformed Church in the Northwest. And we can only operate as this overarching organisation by your grace. And if we don't have the support of the members of the synod, we cannot do. But what the synod as an organisation does is to try and take away some of that pressure. And I think that's what was trying to be achieved a few years ago with missional partnerships and the centralisation of various things. And other synods are now looking at Northwest and saying, this model's really good. Because actually, ministers' expenses being paid from the centre takes the pressure off local churches. Mancy's being managed centrally takes the pressure off local churches. Cars and communications being managed centrally takes the pressure off. I think the difference is the way that other synods are going about it is more pastoral. And I sense within the churches in the synod, there's a real sense of having been done so.
I think that's fair.
And I think we need to reflect on that.
Yes.
And consider where that goes. And the synod is not top down. We're a congregational Presbyterian church at heart. We bottom up. So we respond to the needs. And the resolution we passed last week about spending monies from the sale of churches is a prime example of that. Some people thought this was about the synod wanting the money. No, it's the absolute opposite. This is the synod wanting you to spend the money for the glory of God's kingdom.
Yeah.
And by the synod holding it, it forces, hopefully, you to spend it.
Yeah.
And the prime example is we still have over £1 million, 1.4 million in the man's scheme that's reserved for churches to spend. And we need to spend our money to glorify the kingdom of God, because actually the rainy day is here. We're seeing reduced numbers. We're seeing people consider different things, but we're also seeing that growth.
Yeah.
That shoot of growth, that people are asking questions. So let's spend the money to try and engage with that.
Yes.
And to see how we can develop then communities and faith communities that are strong.
That's helpful. And I think if the churches hear what you're saying and believe it,
and that's the problem. Yeah,
that's a powerful message, because you're right. It's been a combination historically. It's a combination of nurture and nature. You know, we are fiercely independent as a people. That's the nature. The nurture is the history, and there is a sense in which stuff has been done too by the synod. And the reason why I hear what you say as quite powerful is that yes, it's true that everybody makes up the synod, but the synod as an organization is the one that holds, for example, the money, which is power.
It is.
And what I hear you saying is that the synod is here to use that power as a servant of the church.
Absolutely. In theological terms, we could talk for hours, Lawrence, but mission is everything we do. It's how we use our buildings, how we maintain our buildings, how we engage on the internet, how we present our services, how we worship, how we engage with the community. It's all mission. So all the money we have should be used for that, and we just need to make sure that we make it easier for people to access it. And I will say quite openly, if you're having problems accessing it from the synod, send me an email, and we'll see what we can do to make it simpler, because that's what it's about. We, as a synod, we're not here to line barns and store riches, because that's not what we do, and the Bible tells us that really clearly. But I think the other thing to say is, one of the things I've heard really loud and clear is the desire to review where we are. And I'm pleased to say that Synod Exec have agreed we're going to do that. So we're in the process of trying to find someone that will review missional partnerships, review the structures, to see how we move ahead. Review doesn't mean change. Review means having a blooming good look at it and seeing what works and what doesn't. And it's important we have somebody from outside the synod that does that, so they're totally unbiased. And it excites me that Synod Exec, you agreed that unanimously, because within the construction of missional partnerships, there was agreement it would be reviewed in time. And it's been 10 years. So the time has come.
Good.
So next year we'll look at that. I have no idea what the outcome will be, but whoever does it will involve a lot of listening.
I still maintain that in both the synod and more widely in the denomination, the only way that we can expand the pool of ministry available is to enable and free up our elders, who, after all, are ordained ministers.
Ordained ministers within the denomination.
Within the denomination. And
that's one of the questions, I think, I don't think it's one of the questions I've been asking as I go round. As a synod, what could we do to make your life easier? And there's got to be an acceptance that, for me, a real good acceptance that actually administering the expenses of the missional partnership's a good thing, the minister. But within that, you've got to people have to realise that there's price increases, the mileage allowance has gone up, water rates have gone up, everything's gone up. So it's going to mean that we have to increase what we request from the churches for that, because everything's gone up. And the expenses that are paid out, there's no profit in that. It purely goes out to pay the expenses.
Money in out.
But the cost of life has gone up. And if you were administering that as a local church, you just have to work out a way to absorb that cost. But that question then comes to the synod rather than you worrying about it, Weston, and that frees up, hopefully, elders to do things.
Yes.
And And I hope as well some of the synod staff that we have free up elders to do things with the safeguarding, with buildings, with trust. It frees up elders to get on and to work out what ministry means within the context they find themselves.
So I've got two more questions for you, Mike. The first one is, given that this is not just a Northwest Synod story at all, it's not even a URC, uniquely a URC story, but so many of our churches these days, the whole kind of post-Christendom thing, where they're at sea because the landscape doesn't look the way that it did. It's not the same landscape that they inherited. And the levels of anxiety and I call it survivalism. You know, how are we going to get through? How are we going to survive particularly to the next generation? How do you help churches? How have you helped churches in your ministry to navigate that?
And I think it's, if we spend all our time being anxious about the next generation, we're never going to be able to support the generation that's here. So I think the starting point is look at what's around you, look at what you need to do in the here and now, and build the kingdom now. We can't preserve our churches for the next generation if it dies in this generation. So it's looking at what's around. What are the people around your church? And I worked with a village church in Oxfordshire, and they said, "Oh, it's terrible. We've got no young families." And I said, "What have you got in the village?" "Oh, they're all retired folk." I said, "Right, okay. So the question is, what can you do for the retired folk?" So they started doing coffee mornings. And strangely enough, people started coming to church and engaging with it because that was the group that was there on the doorstep. And that's what we need to do. We need to look at what's there. And I think as churches consider survival mode, actually, it's important to think about that, but it's important to think about what's happening now. And to take that risk, to be brave, to trust in God, that God's got it and God will help you keep going. Changing that focus from maintenance to mission. And I hope that I'll encourage churches to do that as I go around and just to get them to think slightly differently.
So my last question.
Okay.
We've been talking about the stuff that, in what one way of looking at it would be to say, this is the stuff that you live for as a minister and are called to do. Absolutely. And that passion comes through clearly. I find myself going back again and again and being really disturbed and challenged personally. I'm talking personally now by the incident in Jesus's life when he first of all lays it out to the disciples. Discipleship ultimately is about the cross. So we've been talking about what you live for as a minister. There's also the Jesus question as part of discipleship about what you die for. So what would you go to the wall for in terms of your faith?
That's a really tough question, isn't it? And it's one of those interesting ones, and it is something I have reflected on. And the reason being, when you're an army chaplain, you go to certain places in the world that people might not like you. And they don't see the fact that you're a person of faith, that you don't carry a weapon. They see the uniform. And it was interesting in Iraq and Afghanistan that there was a respect from some of the local workers because they realized I had a cross on my collar. And they realized that I was the chaplain. And there was a mutual respect of a person of faith. And I remember discussing with chaplains in that scenario what we do. And I think for me, it's one of those, if I was, even with a gun to my head, told I had to renounce my faith, I hope and pray I'd stand firm and say, no, this is what's important. The cross of Christ is important. This is what I'll live and die for. Thankfully, I never had to do that. But I think that for me is actually, we've got to make sure that our faith is essential and work blooming hard, as it says in our statement of nature, faith and order, to challenge the structures that say faith isn't important. And for me, that's not just about our faith as Christians. We're seeing the marginalization of all faiths. And we need to work together to make sure that faith is always on the agenda. Because as people of faith, the kingdom can flourish.
Mike, thank you so much for your generosity and time and being so open. I'm sure that you will find a lot of excitement around in the churches at your appointment.
Thank you.
I hope they don't try and hide it from you, but that it's allowed to be visible and it encourages you.
Thank you.
I wish you every blessing and a real dollop of God's Spirit in your ministry.
And I'd request one thing from every single member of our synod for me, and that's a simple request: pray for me. Pray for me and my family as we move up here. Pray for me as I go around the churches, as I listen. Pray for me as I help you discern where God's leading you, because it's no easy role, and I can't do this without prayer and the grace of God. So please pray for me as I take on this task.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless.